So the first step is here we need to remove the lug nuts. Now if you don't have an impact gun, what you can use is one of the lug nut removal tools that come with your vehicle. Get yourself a piece of pipe, place the lug nut wrench over the lug nut, place the pipe over the end, and just torque it. Now make sure your parking brake is on when you do this, or chuck the wheels. Now the lower strut is held on by these two lower nuts. Now these tend to be on very tight, especially if your car, think about it, if the car is 10, 15 years old, just imagine how tight these guys are going to be. Now what you can use is WD-40 or PB Blaster, but the one thing I definitely recommend is get yourself a breaker bar. As you can see, it's very, very long. This will give you a lot of leverage to loosen up these bolts. Now this happens to be 3/4 of an inch, or if you're using metric, 19 millimeters. Just place the breaker bar with the socket over the bolt, and then I'll use a wrench to hold the opposite side, because the opposite side here will tend to move. And then go ahead and loosen it up. As you can see, using the breaker bar is a huge help. You don't need any air tools, and it just makes the job a lot easier. And the one thing I always recommend is use good hand tools. Don't use any cheap stuff, because you can strip out the bolts and now you have a much bigger problem. So get good quality tools, Craftsman, Snap-on, Lowe's, Home Depot has Husky, whatever works. Just make sure it's good quality. And in the meantime, I am going to leave just one lower bolt here attached to the strut. And that's because when we remove the top bolts, I don't want this strut falling on any brake lines. So just keep one bolt in the meantime attached to the strut. And then we have these top mounts. These happen to be 12 millimeter, and you have 3 of them. So go ahead and just remove all 3. Now before we remove the strut, what you want to make sure is that any components tied into the strut has been removed. So in this case we have a brake line that's attached to the strut, as you can see right here. Now this is held on by one clip. So what you're going to do is get a flathead screwdriver, place it underneath, because we need to push up or push out the clip. Get a hammer, and I'll tap the bottom of the screwdriver. And that's it. And when you remove the strut, just be careful, because there's an ABS sensor line. You don't want to nick that. It is very tight. Just be careful and you'll be successful in removing it. Ugh. Alright, we're in good shape. Now once you set up your new Rokkor system, in other words, once you set up your height that you choose and the tension in the spring that you like, we'll go ahead and reinstall this back into the vehicle. So of course, just line up your 3 top bolts with the top mount inside the car, and then we'll feed the bottom mount here back onto the hub. Then grab your nut and just fish it in, and there you go. Now these top ones, you really don't have to torque these. These are around 14 to 15 foot-pounds, so don't go crazy needing a torque wrench. Just make them nice and snug. Now to tighten these bottom 2 bolts, what you need is a torque wrench. In this case, we'll do around 114, 115 foot-pounds, and you'll need a torque wrench. I'll include a link right now showing how to use a torque wrench. Whenever you deal with these kind of suspension components, you have to make sure that the bolts are really, really tight, because if they're not, you're going to start hearing a lot of clanking, and then you have to jack up the car and fix the problem. Now, if you don't have a torque wrench, just make sure you do this really, really tight, where you tighten the bolts a very good amount. But do yourself a favor, you could pick up a torque wrench. This is a 1/2-inch drive from Harbor Freight, maybe around 20 bucks. And again, we'll do 114, 115 foot-pounds. Now, once we hit 115 foot-pounds, the wrench clicks and we know we're in good shape. And that's it. He's right though. I mean, you really should do a start back.
I always do. It's just funny that.
Yeah, I was doing, I think, John's rear brakes, and it was about to rain. I was like flying through it. And of course, with the finished product, this is essentially what it's going to look like. A really nice drop. Again, you can customize it to any look that you wish, and there you go.